Welcome to Small Business, Big Network, the podcast for small business owners who want big results from their networking. I'm Liz Drury, a freelance voiceover artist who knows that if you're not working, then networking could help. Daryl Woodhouse is a speaker, coach and advisor who is all about achieving a good life-work balance. Daryl has experienced the effects of burnout for himself, and he's passionate about making sure other people have the tools to avoid this. This interview was recorded in March 2021, when my 16-year-old son was at home doing his A-levels online. He chose the time of this podcast recording to print out something really long and complicated on the printer in my office, so I do apologise for any background noise. But that's the realities of homeschooling. Thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, Daryl.
Thank you for having me, Liz.
Now, you've got a really impressive CV from working in the corporate world and then becoming a successful entrepreneur and now coaching other people. But how did you get started in business?
Thank you for your kind comments, Liz, and great question. I guess the earlier corporate career, I was very lucky to get a lot of really great training, development and experience in business strategy and building teams and developing a high performance culture, customer excellence, and lots of other important and valuable skills. And when I was lucky to progress into a national role for a FTSE top 10 company, in that role, I enjoyed it, and it was really lovely to reach that level at a young age. I still felt like a small fish in a big pond, and there was a certain direction that the corporate culture was designed to go, and I wanted to do more. I wanted to have a bigger impact and influence more people, and share the skills and experiences that I'd learned, and that's where I drew the inspiration to start my first business back in 2012, and I made that business a entrepreneur mentoring, business coaching, and leadership training company. Effectively doing what I love, which has always been about helping people and mentoring and helping them develop and not just learn from the successes of others, but also the failures from others, so that hopefully people don't have to make the mistakes themselves. They can learn from the mistakes of others.
And tell me what happened to you in 2016.
Yeah, in 2016, that was a sort of tough year. I'd always been someone who worked really hard and worked really long hours, far too many hours for far too long. And for a number of years before 2016, I had various signs from my body that I was doing too much. I need to slow down. But I kept going, and I ignored those signs. I just learnt or believed, or was conditioned to believe, that those feelings of stress and irritable bowel syndrome, problems sleeping, fatigue, chronic pains in my neck, back and shoulders, all of these things, I just learned that was part of what you had to do if you wanted to get ahead and be successful. You had to put those long hours in. You had to keep going. And I still remember one of my previous corporate bosses, his voice. I can remember almost word for word when we were talking about how tired I was, and I was frustrated at one point about the long hours and so on. And he said, "Look, Daryl," he said, "if you want to get ahead, and if you want to keep building your career, and you want to provide for your family, you got to suck up the stress. You just got to keep going. This is part of the journey. If it's not for you, then you need to go and get an easier job with less working hours and lower pay." And so I still remember those words, and I just kind of went with it. And I thought it was fine because I was fairly fit and healthy. I was fairly young, so I thought, it'll get easier. It'll be fine. And then something unexpected happened in my private life in 2016. It's something that can happen to any one of us, and that made everything too much. And when I look back, if I was more aware of workaholism, and if I was more aware of actually how we can have a better life and more success at work with a life-work balance, as opposed to the old long working hour culture, then I would have done things very differently, and I'd have been better equipped to have handled the personal tragedy in 2016, and the burnout wouldn't have got as bad. I probably wouldn't be managing several health conditions every day for the rest of my life that I now have to live with. And so I kind of, since then, since my recovery, I use my personal story to share with others and educate that, you don't need to work the long hours. And if you do, worst case scenario, this is the kind of stuff that can happen. And people don't come back from it. And for instance, during coronavirus, which has caused a lot of pain and trauma and suffering for people, in emotionally, financially, and more. Yeah, it's increased suicide rates and mental health cases and so on as well. So I'm here to kind of help people avoid getting to that place, ideally, or worst case, helping them deal with those situations, and showing them an easier way of living and succeeding. And that's around having a life-work balance and developing your productivity mastery skills, and carefully balancing well-being and self-care.
How often do you think that burnout occurs during in entrepreneurs?
That's a really good question, and one I've thought about a lot, because in a way, there's lots of research available for this, but then there's also lots of areas that are a bit grey, and where we perhaps haven't yet got the data to support what we think is happening. But I can say, for instance, there was a study a couple of years ago in America. So for our US audience, but I do believe that that the numbers must be comparative to the UK or wherever else you are in the world. But it was 77% of full-time workers had said that they had experienced burnout themselves in their careers. So that's pretty high, and of course there's different ranges in the spectrum or the different severity levels of burnout. Some can have it really, really bad, and some can have it bad, but it's quite a quick recovery. And then if you now then switch that across to what I think would be happening for entrepreneurs, well, my corporate career was hard work, but nothing prepared me for the challenges and the stress of starting a business. There's so much you don't learn at school or at university or reading in books. There's so much you just have to almost learn on the job, unless you have a good mentor, for example, who's been there and done it. So wow, I mean, when I look back at the highs and lows of 9 years I've been in my own business as an entrepreneur, and I've obviously had that major burnout. I've been close to burning out a couple of times since as well. It might be worth exploring those. And I just know that a lot of my clients over the years and my friends that are entrepreneurs, most of them have had direct experience of burnout, some more severe than others, of course. But it's a real thing, and in worst case scenario, it can cause all sorts of problems. Permanent health issues, broken families, broken relationships, divorce, business failure. It really can be not very nice. But the good news is that with increased awareness and improved life-work balance, well-being, healthcare, productivity skills, absolutely we can avoid it, and we can actually enjoy our lives more and enjoy more business success without working long hours. So we can have more time for family, fitness, friends, hobbies. And that's what I've been able to enjoy more of in the last few years since I changed the way I did things.
Now, you've already kind of alluded to this, but do you think it's easy to get sucked back into being an alcoholic, a workaholic?
I didn't.
Maybe that too.
Yeah, I didn't. Thankfully, that wasn't one of the ways I responded to burnout. Actually, I didn't go down that route, but I know others who have. So it's quite a common thing. But yeah, sorry, Lindsay. I love the realness of our conversation.
Yeah. So, do you think it's easy to get sucked back into that whole working too hard when you've been there before?
Yes, definitely, definitely. So like for me, that workaholism, that ambition, it's been there for a long time. And when I was getting therapy to help me come back from burnout, and to learn what was going on with me and how to better cope with it in the future, the therapist was asking me a lot of quite deep questions going right back to my childhood. And that's when I learned that being bullied from age 6 to 18 through all of my school
Wow.
years, um, that was a form of relational trauma. And I then sort of studied and learned a bit about all the different types of traumas that people can go through. And I was like, oh wow, okay, this is a massive topic. Most people have experienced trauma in one way or another, and we all react differently to traumas as well. And one way that I responded to that bullying, that trauma, was to choose to not go to university, for fear of kind of more bullying. I wanted to get away from the
Mm.
education system and build myself a successful working career, to prove to myself and to the bullies that I wasn't a loser, that I was uh, reasonably clever and I could make something of myself. And so that's where my workaholism and long excessive working hours kind of came from.
Hmm.
And I wish I knew that many years before, because obviously I would have approached things differently,
Mm.
and I probably would have had more of a social life during my 20s, and more time for my family and less health issues and a whole load of other things. So again, it's an important thing to share as part of educating
Mm.
others.
And you mentioned earlier on that when you were in the corporate world, your boss suggested that you just needed to suck up the stress and get on with
Yes,
it.
yes.
Do you think that advice is given to people a lot?
Yeah, so I always err on caution if I don't know, exactly. um, but this boss wasn't the only one that had said it to me. I'd witnessed it in other sort of, if you like, senior high flyer executive types. So I guess my sense is that it's kind of like a slightly old-fashioned,
Mm.
kind of traditional approach or mindset, and I do believe it's largely born out of corporate culture. However, I think that is changing, slowly but surely. For example, our younger generations, millennials and whatnot, they are, through research, it's showing that they are more motivated these days, or a lot of them are more motivated by a healthy lifestyle and having more fun and not working really long hours, and they don't need or want to earn a six-figure salary.
Mm.
They want more of a balance, and so with that as a growing trend from our younger generations, larger companies and business entrepreneur employers as well, they're going to need to adjust their recruitment policies and adjust their culture to accommodate
Hmm.
what the young top talent wants, because they're not going to be able to expect necessarily the same results, and the same drive from some of these people, and they'll be equally capable and very loyal, but they don't want to come into a culture of long working hours and self-sacrifice. Um, so there's a that change in our younger generation is going to force a more gradual change anyway
Yeah.
in the corporate culture.
Yeah.
But as I say, it. I know I talk about corporate culture quite a bit, but it does happen in entrepreneurs as well. Many entrepreneurs have left a corporate culture because they didn't want the longer working hours and they wanted to be their own boss. And then a lot of them find that actually it's even more stress and
Yeah.
even longer hours. It's just endless. So again, that's where it's important. My message, I feel, is important to show people a way of achieving all that stuff that you want to, but whilst having a much healthier balance and having more fun.
Yeah. Now, I noticed that you've been talking about a life-work balance, not a work-life balance,
Mm,
which is often the way people
good
say it.
spot.
Is that deliberate?
100%. I'm glad you mentioned it. A few people pick that up and they think, isn't it work-life balance? And then they pause for a second and then actually, no, it should be
Mm.
life-work balance. Why is it work-life
Yeah.
balance? And I don't know, maybe some corporate exec came up with the work-life balance concept. But I always say, kind of jokingly, but it's a serious point here. We were born naked, and then quickly put into a nappy. We weren't born into a business suit, or a workman uniform or work lady uniform. We were born to have fun and to live our lives, and then work came in later as we get older as a means to continue and enjoy our lives further. So it should always be life first.
Yeah.
And I just wonder if the fact that it's been the wrong way round for so long, I just wonder if that's part of why we're in this society where we're always on, and
Yeah.
it's normal to work long hours and have high pressure jobs.
Yeah. So I know that now you have a 4-day working week. Do you think that that's achievable for anybody?
Oh, definitely, definitely. For a few reasons, really. I think partly is about perhaps lowering our expectations, and just and I know many people I've met over the years and who I've mentored and coached. Many are initially quite focused on money and
Mm.
monetary gain, and so they want to and feel they have to work long hours to maximise the chance of achieving those monetary goals. But I just sort of talk to people about, well, why? Why do you want to earn that much? And then when I challenge that and leave them to pause and think about that, often, surprisingly often actually, they don't really know why they came up with that number. They haven't actually worked out that, oh, they need that precise number to afford a particular size house or a
Hmm.
particular size car. They just picked that number because it felt like a good aspiration. So then I say to them, okay, right, well, um, you're close to achieving that and you're doing 6 days a week, but what do you think you can achieve in 4 days a week? And think about life as well. Think about how you'd have more time for living and hobbies and fun and family and all this kind of stuff. But maybe you'd only be on 50k a year instead of 100k. How would you feel about that? And actually that's really good. And it's amazing that when you sort of really think things through and think about what's really important, it's more than just money. There's some people that want to be multimillionaires, absolutely, and that's fine, and that's their choice. Absolutely, they can go for that. But I'm just seeing a lot of or a massive trend of people realizing that it's not all about money, and then you can lower your expectations for if you can lower your expectations for earning and income and business revenue, because you might put a higher value on a 4-day week and more time for hobbies and things like this, then let's go for it and let's do it.
Mm.
It's not for everyone, as I said, but I'm finding for a lot of people it is, and really figuring out what's important. And again, I just think it's a traditional thing that we use money as a measure of success and achievement, whereas actually, surely achieving a 4-day week and a sensible income is quite a good achievement. Building your own business from scratch, to a point where you've got a team and it can run without you. You can go on, holiday for a couple of weeks,
Mm.
and there'll still be a business at the end of it. And you can have 4 or 5 holidays a year as a business owner, whilst doing a 5-day or even a 4-day week. Surely that's a massive achievement.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
it's about sort of changing people's perceptions a little bit.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you use networking in your business?
Yeah, it's so important, for our business. And before COVID, the main ways that we found new customers was from delivering great service and building great case studies. So we'd get lots of referrals. I would go and speak at a lot of events talking about things like the top 9 reasons businesses fail and how to beat the odds, with practical tips and advice. So we'd get a lot of inquiries and new clients come from those public speaking events, and then there'd usually be a networking piece during those such events as well. So that's another way we'd meet people, and that was it. That was it really. We didn't really do much investment in online marketing, just because we didn't need to. However, in the world of COVID, obviously a lot of those freedoms were removed.
Mm.
So we've had to work really hard to expand our network, and to do that through the virtual world and LinkedIn. really comes up trumps there.
Mm.
If you learn a little bit about kind of some of the top tips and best ways to build quality relationships and how to engage with people and be authentic through LinkedIn messaging and posting and so on, you can really build up. Most businesses you can build through LinkedIn. It doesn't cost that much. If you learn the right techniques, you can achieve quite a lot new business just through sort of half an hour a day on LinkedIn. So I'm a massive fan of that as a platform, and it's especially helpful when businesses are even more mindful of spending money on marketing and other things like that. It's a very sort of lean way of building a business and
And
reaching your ideal customers.
do you think that you've reached more people and perhaps different people than you would have done in the traditional networking circuit?
Definitely, yes, 100%. It's kind of removed, if you like, country and region barriers. My network and our client base now is much. It was international before COVID, but now it's much more expansive and international, and had fun trying to navigate different time zones further afield with Australia, for example, and that's been quite tricky because it's quite hard to find a time that is convenient for the other person. But if you move a few things around, it can, without eating too much into someone's evening or making them get up an hour earlier. So that's been quite fun, but it's definitely been a positive overall, I'd say, or one of the positives from COVID, that it's expanded people's minds and expanded the global reach of our networks.
And obviously, you said you were using speaking at events as a good way to connect with audiences. There haven't been any physical events happening, but have you still managed to find ways to speak in the virtual world?
Yeah, definitely. It's been a lot harder and different. So before COVID, I did do some voluntary speaking, often for sort of charity purposes. But I was, very lucky to be paid, invited to speak at events and conferences. So a lot of those paid engagements have disappeared, hopefully temporarily, but there are still some. And there was, especially when COVID first came in, an expectation that all speakers need to appear for free, and I get that, and I went with it, and I did a lot of kind of free voluntary talks, because you've got to be in it to win it, and you've got to put your name out there. So if the party hosting the event has a great client base of an audience of people that you want to work with, and if you need new clients because you're rebuilding your business through COVID, then absolutely you need to go and do it. It's a marketing activity. So yeah, so that's been interesting, because then again it's like having to expand the network further as well, and some great in-person event companies just didn't survive COVID. So finding out about which providers are surviving and how well they are pivoting to virtual events, and finding the new ones as well. And then it's about sort of prioritize finding the best ones, because otherwise you could literally spend 24 hours a day going speaking at free events. But it's about kind of being a bit more strategic and making sure they're the right events with the right audience. And then if you do that, then more of the right people will hear your message, and they'll become your clients and eventually raving fans, hopefully.
And how do you plan to carry on using networking in your business sort of as we go forward into hopefully a post-COVID world?
I think probably carrying on largely. I think I've become very grateful and used to working from home entirely, and it's quite nice being around my wife and my kids more, and not having the long commute. So I think, or I know that I will travel a lot less when we're allowed to, a lot less than when I did before COVID. And I'm noticing and hearing that's quite common in other people's thinking as well. It's like, if you can make the business work from home, then why do you need to soil the planet with
Yeah.
a long drive, and all this kind of stuff. So it's definitely changed mindsets there. So in the main, I'm gonna continue to do the stuff I've done through COVID, really. Networking online, especially around LinkedIn, speaking at events. I've been lucky to be invited to speak on a number of great podcasts, including yourself. I've got a podcast coming out myself soon, which I'm co-creating with another expert. I'm really looking forward to doing that. So we're going to have a fun doing that as a hopefully as a dynamic duo. And then I've also been putting on my own virtual events as well. So that's another great way that I can reach new people and add value to my existing network. And obviously, again, it's just your time. It's a very low cost way
Yeah.
of building your business.
And just finally then, who is it that you're looking to work with and how can they find you?
Thank you, Liz. The people I work with, it's quite varied, to be honest. I guess they fall into two main camps. There's larger, medium and large corporate organisations that I work with. Typically, I'm brought in by the HR directors to do work with their teams and their workforce around the life work effect, which is my method of helping people live happier and achieve more at work through productivity mastery, strategy planning, life work balance and well-being. And then the other side of my audience are business owners and entrepreneurs, and sometimes it's working with them one-on-one with the aspects of the life work effect, sharing my tools and experiences, helping them get ahead more easily with that life work balance and productivity skill. And then with the larger SMEs, then I then get asked to help the entire team. So we do a lot of workshops, team sessions, lunch and learns, and then I have my transformation programs as well, which is for any entrepreneurial leader who wants to go really deep with perfecting and achieving that life work balance with productivity mastery and strategy and planning skills in the business. So yeah, it's quite broad, but the best way to get hold of me is either find me through LinkedIn or YouTube, or through the darylwoodhouse.com website.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks for listening to Small Business, Big Network. If you found this podcast useful, please do rate, review and subscribe. And don't forget to share it with the rest of your network too.